From the pioneers of sneaker talk, bringing you the culture since 2007, OSDLive is back and
Good
even
afternoon.
better.
Hello. Greetings. Obsessive Sneaker Disorder.
Man,
It is real.
it feels good. Feels good to be back.
It does. It does. You know, it's always interesting when people say, you know, when they stumble upon the old live streams and talk about what we've discussed for so many episodes, be it collaborations, be it sneaker culture, be it music, Sean with the sneaker stocks, who's hot, who's not, who's catching, you know, who's going to have to catch, a real, quick strike, who's on the come up. But more importantly, the culture that we love and enjoy, that we live, breathe 24/7, 365, as we talk about. OSD is live. It's good to be back. I'm glad to be here with my brothers. It's one thing to know that we were doing something that no one else was thinking about doing at its time.
Right.
It's good to be a leader versus a follower. We see what has come after us, but also more importantly, there's still room at the table for all of us. So we appreciate that. And to all the podcasts out there that cover, and podcasters and live streamers that to cover and talk about the culture, and these wearable pieces of art, as we certainly know that they are. Yeah, we're here. So with that, let's go first to Dr. RDQLUS. What you been up to? What's cooking?
Man, it has been a lot since we've been on the air together. We've all been in touch, but since we've been in front of the camera as OSDLive, there's been a lot going on. RDQLUS is still moving, designing, doing brand work, but I am now also moved back into the athletic realm. I've coached several Paralympians, several international athletes, and I am now the head coach of the College of St. Mary here in Omaha. So College of St. Mary track and field, stand up.
Let's go.
So that's been a big one.
Congratulations. That's huge.
Appreciate it.
Love what you continue to do, and certainly seeing you with the Paralympians, man. You guys, you were pushing them. You were pushing them.
It's been a blessing. It's been a blessing to sit in that stadium, to travel around the world. My wife and I always joke that this would be my retirement. I'll put on some sneakers and some sweats and coach some people. I'll be damned if it ain't happening. So, knock on wood and praise the Lord. I appreciate it.
There you go.
He left one roll out though, but we'll get to that in a minute.
Right. Dr. Paper Chaser, man, you've no moss grows under your feet. You've been busy. You've been hustling and grinding. So and certainly educating and teaching the youth in New York City and beyond. So
yeah, man.
Yeah.
We are in our own space now. We have, as of July 15th, 2023, Social Studies Community Academy, of which you guys are all a part of. Our Creative Council Pro Day lead right there, our brand director, Steve RDQLUS Gordon. I'm going to let you forget that one. Still holding that one down on us. I was actually just earlier today looking through all the different iterations of our logo since we started the podcast 17 years ago. 17 years ago.
That's wild, man.
So, and coming across all the different iterations and some of the inspiration boards and stuff that RDQLUS showed us before we finally settled on the Manic logo that we've had for so long now. The interesting thing about this journey, man, is how many different places around the world we've been, how many exhibitions we've done, even since 2013. We've done sneaker exhibitions that have been seen by over 13 million people. So
amazing.
Our ability to educate through those experiences and be able to help others do their thing and then come back and do what we need to do, open this academy. Big shout to Steve and Ayala and the family from Healing Souls. And, a big shout out and thank you to our brother Ali Shaheed Muhammad from A Tribe Called Quest, just inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
No doubt.
Also Midnight Hour fame,
Yep.
and all that score work that him and Adrian do, providing good soundtracks for all these shows we love. Thank you for all the folks who've been supporting us and helping us to, stay invigorated and inspired to do what we do. We've continued without doing the podcast to still be just effective in taking over a genuine narrative space that we, between the three of us, is over 10,000 pairs of sneakers over 40 years. And this year, for my birthday, December 28th, I'll be 53. That actually marks my 40th year in sneakers.
That's wild. That's wild. That's wild to think.
Wow.
Yeah. So, since we've opened these doors of the Academy, all the good stories that have come through, shout out to our good friend, Cool DJ Red Alert, big family member of ours here, teaches with us here. His birthday is actually going to be on Thursday, so we got sure to give him a big shout out.
No doubt.
We've over 17 years, having finished doing consistently the OSD podcast for 7 straight years, where you can count how many Wednesdays we took off, where we were averaging between 10 and 12,000 audio downloads a week.
Right.
To the tune of, what do we have? 12 plus million audio downloads.
Absolutely.
Big shout out to TalkShoe. They're still around. They went in a different direction.
Are they really?
Still around.
Yeah,
TalkShoe.com is still around. I looked it up today. They're still around.
Wow.
But all of those special episodes, and then moving over to Google, and then revealing our faces, because we said, you know what? We talk a lot of shit, but we're not going to be the ones to throw the stone and hide our hand. You can find us, you can see us. So we held ourselves accountable when we moved over to Google, and we started doing video, of which there's still a couple of hundred episodes up on our YouTube page from the past. And, with the state of where we are right now, we needed to come back, man. We've lost people this year, a lot of significant folks. There's been a lot of changes in the game, a lot of, adverse latent effects of COVID, a lot of changes, man. It was time for us to really come back and do this, and we're in a space right now, which I'm gonna go, throw this to you guys for, you guys to weigh in on. We're in a space that we've been in before right now. Sneakers. We're in a space where collaborations generally suck right now. Every single one of them, with the exception of, you can count on a couple of hands. We're not going to say who they are. We reserve that for, when we're asked, when appropriate. But by and large, collaborations this year sucked. There was not a lot of storytelling from a lot of people. The ones who did it right, salute to them. They know who they are because they took the effort to do it. Right. And we're not going to help the resellers out by throwing their names out there to make people go and get them. But they know who they are, and we know who they are, because we all lock in with each other. But I think that the flashpoint, you guys again weigh in on this. The flashpoint for me was, where we needed to come back, was what we saw happen at ComplexCon with Bimma and Yachty, where we finally were like, fuck this. It's time for us to come back and have a genuine space that we used to occupy, and our opinion is valued, and it means something to bring something back to the game. So y'all weigh in on that.
Yeah. Well, things. I mean, everything is going to change. We know that. Rest in peace to Dean Earl Peace at College of the Holy Cross in Worcester. He used to always say this, and it always stuck in my mind. He says, change is inevitable except from vending machines. And he had a wry sense of humor. And when he would drop that gem with the students and us other administrators, and I was like, it's so true. Like, it's going to happen no matter what. You're either going to take the initiative, and take the first step. Like anything, the first thing is to make up your mind and then actually take action, right? And be it the collabs, or be it ComplexCon, or even that conversation, like to watch the video. And I'm glad we saw the subsequent apology of both Yachty and Bimma on live. That it should not have come to that. that could have been stopped by everyone who was on stage, everyone involved behind the scenes in putting on ComplexCon, but they chose not to for whatever reason. They chose not to because they wanted something, sensational or something, but like, wow, that wow factor, right? But at the end of the day, you had two human beings, or particularly one human being disrespecting another human being, and people in the audience applauding it. And I was like, this shit sucks. This shouldn't happen. It's like seeing an elder, an uncle, or auntie, or grandparents, standing as they get on maybe the train or the bus, and you not standing up to offer them a seat. At least offer them. Let them tell you no, thank you. And no one in the audience, like I heard a couple screams of people like, yo, that chill. But the people at who had the organizers could have done something differently. And that was the piece that really, really, frustrated me. So eventually, fast forward to the apology. Yes. Bimma shared his opinion. That's all he did.
As a veteran in the business who has worked in the very same space that he had an opinion on.
Not everyone's gonna like what you do or like you, period, right? Like everyone's not gonna love you. So you got a reaction, great. Move on to the next thing. I would actually, if anything, Yachty had an opportunity to be like, yo, DM you, hit him, like, yo, let's work on something. Let's come back with something on the, as a follow-up, right?
Yeah.
But he wasn't there mentally at that point in time. And he said he lost his cool. No. He got personal. Yeah. So enough of that for right now. I think
that's to that point. That's exactly why we've talked for so long about coming back. The wheel always spins back around. As much as we make progress, things are still the same. And there's a time when you look at any other culture, especially cultures around a collectible, a thing, whether it's an activity or whatnot. We talked about this way back. We are the only culture that doesn't have elders. Right. We don't necessarily respect the elders. It's like you got to move on. You got to get out of the way. Any other culture, you're looking at, it is, absolutely. Any other culture, you're looking at vintage. You're looking at, we just got done talking about something vintage and how that trail passes down. It's trackable. It's traceable. It's just, it's a strange thing that footwear and sneakers in particular have always been seen as a kid's game.
Right.
And so that young energy comes bubbling up and wants to displace everything. And then you're left with all of this history just shoved aside.
Well, that's because sneaker culture and hip hop culture are the same. One comes from the other. As much as people try to separate it, that's been one of our missions since we started our social studies program, to make sure people know hip hop culture and sneaker culture are tied together, and the same rules that govern what real sneaker culture is are hip hop rules.
Right.
And that's why we have the same problem in both cultures, is when people reach a certain age, the young folks want to move them out the way. The problem is, that's because the elders have never taken it upon themselves to reach back down and mentor, which was one of the key elements in hip hop knowledge, mentorship. We never jumped into anything unless we approached an elder to show us how to do it. We wanted to learn how to DJ, we wanted to learn how to MC, we wanted to learn how to b-boy, we wanted to learn how to do graffiti. All the elements intrinsically had mentorship in them. You couldn't just pick up a spray can one day and just decide I'm going to be a graffiti artist.
Nah.
But access to things has sort of created this chasm between the two, where a youngster might see it and figure out, I don't have to talk to anybody, because like it was instilled in us that we need to approach someone. They're not moving with that same ethos of having to approach an elder or someone who's been doing it a little longer than them and say, hey, I want to rock with you so you can show me how to move that way and do this.
I want to learn.
Exactly. And it's like that in shoes. And one of the good things, the segment to our guest, you start talking about, I saw Eric Sermon say this not too long ago. I forgot where he was saying. I think it was Drink Champs. But You know, when you talk about music, especially our music, hip hop culture, there's nothing timeless being made.
Yeah.
There's nothing that any of these folks can
Mm-mm.
perform
Mm-mm.
10, 15, or 20 years from now.
No,
Right?
no.
But today, you know, with our return, we have a guest that is timeless, and his work has stayed relevant, and the contributions that he's made 30, 40 years ago are still popping, are still in the zeitgeist, are
Right.
still being worn, are still, you know, being highly regarded. So, you know, let's bring the homie in, our big homie. He's been a good friend of ours, and I'm happy that we finally got him on. I think, honestly, in our first iteration of OSDs, our man has never made it on the first tour of OSD. So happy to have him here for the first time now
Yep.
on the return. Steven
Nice.
Smith, what's
Nice.
up, baby?
Hey, it's great to be here. It's a good day.
It's a great day.
Great day.
Thanks for being here. Congratulations, first and foremost.
Yeah, I got
You,
a new
you,
role coming.
yeah. I mean, you know, you're like, and I won't compare you to the Jake Paul Tyson fight because you know we know how staged that was. But I was saying you've taken some body blows, but this is not your first rodeo. You've been not only in the game, part of the game, creating the game, fostering it for many
Innovating.
years. Um, that some people would say, you know what, I'm going to take my ball and go to play on a different court. But one thing I love about you is your energy. You continue to innovate and reinvent not only yourself, but more importantly, reinvent footwear. And we've seen that over, I would say now, probably going on, wow, close to 5 decades at this
Yeah.
point in time.
Yeah.
Um, when you think about where you are now, or more importantly, the where you are beginning now, when you step back and think about your progression and just where your path has taken you, how does that make you feel? Like, what comes to mind? Did you see this being, the footwear industry being where you were going to be?
No, it's kind of funny, my passion's always been machinery. And originally I wanted to be a automotive designer, but I ran high school track and I was a shoe nerd because, if your equipment didn't work right, you didn't run well.
That's right.
So it really, the sneakers really interested me back in the late 70s when I was running with my older sister. And I don't know, there's just something about them, and again, in other times I've talked about it is in those days, my family wasn't wealthy and you had to choose wisely on what you got for back to school. So you went back to school shopping and you got your one pair of shoes. And I ended up picking the running shoes because I like to run. And um, I started to have an interest and an eye on what was happening to them and the flare and flash of all of it.
Hmm.
And while I was running so much, I needed a more durable shoe. And New Balance had just come out with the 990s, and they wore like iron. And so that was my go-to shoe, and I ran in 990s all through college. And that ended up when I graduated. They got our curriculum towards what was there in Massachusetts, and it was early computer companies through Harvard and MIT at Wang, Digital Data General, and then the other big employer for us in the product design world was Corning Medical.
Wow.
And New Balance, I had heard about this job there, and I was like, people design sneakers, and I was like, well, I didn't know they did because they really didn't at that point. There were a few of us that were the beginnings of it. There was a another guy there, Kevin Brown. He had just started the year before, and was the second ever designer in New Balance's history. So to me, as a product designer, I'm like, oh wow, I can make this thing better and find all the things that I thought could be made better in it. And that's what started to interest me in it.
Mm.
It was interesting. There were no seasons or holiday introductions for these styles. We just updated it when it needed to. It was always newer and better. If we weren't going to update it unless it was going to be better. So new processes, new materials came out. So it really fascinated me. And so those early lessons that I learned at New Balance kind of taught me my craft going forward. And again, when I approached the designs, it was always new and better, not just different. And I think that's what separated a lot of the designs I did and allows them to stay relevant, because at that moment in time they were newer and better than everything that was out there. And that kind of shaped my whole career. And I never thought I was going to design sneakers or sporting goods, because I've done other things besides the sneakers my whole career. I really didn't know what I was going to do. It's funny, people are like, was this your plan? I'm like, nah, I had no plan. I needed a job. And I like to run, and I could run at my job. So I'm like, it's a win.
There you go.
Let's
and I get
go.
to run. And I got free sneakers.
Bonus.
Yeah.
But it was funny, for years. For years, I kept all of those sneakers from when I kept all those sneakers all those years that I ran in as a preteen and a teen. I had these Puma Power Cats. I had these Converse running shoes. They actually made a decent running shoe back then. I went through a whole series of Adidas countries before I kind of settled on my 990s.
Nice.
People forget that those things were all technical running shoes at the time.
Yep.
State of the art.
Yep.
Now they're casual and lifestyle, but they were performance running.
So when you hear the term, the godfather of dad shoes, I mean, what does that make you feel? The Godfather. I just, I think of the movie, of course, but like when you hear the Godfather of dad shoes, how does that make you feel?
It was really funny. When that article first came out with, I think it was High Snobiety or Hype Beast, who they didn't tell me what the article was going to be called. And, I kind of got offended by it. I'm like, dad shoes? I design technical running shoes and high performance spikes for Olympic athletes. I'm like, what the hell? And then, then I dug around in it. I'm like, oh, it's actually a compliment, I guess. It's kind of cool. Those New Balances have become that. And it was, they were a status symbol. And, like a lot of things in my life, I'm like, that's weird. Why is that happening? And it was it was the final flag that brought me to Ye's attention, was seeing that, like, that's the guy I want to come to Yeezy. And it reminded me still of being in school. I went and did an internship at this place called Forest Associates that we were supposed to design products at. And we ended up doing interior design and architecture. So I did endless, mindless blueprint drawings. I'm like, God, this sucks. I never want to work at a consultant again. Because we had to do the architectural projects to keep the lights on. And the whole summer, I did one product design job. And that was at the very end. And it was to retrofit a piece of equipment that they had designed a couple of years ago. And I was like, God, consultancies suck. But, when I interviewed at New Balance, they asked, can you do blueprint drawings? And I whipped out all these architectural drawings. They're like, holy crap, I guess you can. They said, yeah, I did an entire summer of them. And so it's just kind of one of those coincidental, haphazard things that got you to the next step, the next phase, like a happy accident, yes, right? Because I was doing these blueprint drawings that got me the job. I hated them, but they got me the job.
Right.
The Godfather of dad shoes, I kind of didn't understand it, but it got got me the job. So I can't complain, you know, you never know what weird thing is gonna draw you into it. So I embraced it and celebrated it because, yeah, as those shoes became more and more popular and New Balances started to gain more and more appreciation in the business, it became kind of a cool thing to be known as that.
Yeah.
So I'm not offended by it. It's actually a nice badge to go to my grave with.
Yeah. I mean,
I've been called worse.
Recently, I assume. but you know, one of the things you know, in talking to you, you know, before being here, hearing you talk about that excites me, and because you make one of my favorite shoes ever in life, you designed during your time at Reebok, the Instapump Fury. Talk about that time at Reebok where you guys literally were like sneaker scientists. Give us a little bit of that.
Yeah, it was really different, you know, and that's funny because that's one of the ones where I'm like, that's no dad shoe. That thing was the future. It was science fiction that we brought to life. In those days, we had passed Nike as #1 when the launch of the pump came out, and we were flying. And Paul Fireman wanted to build this team of dreamers and thinkers to build the future of what Reebok could be. And it was myself as the designer and 2 development guys, Litchfield and Peter Foley, and the 3 of us were just empowered to go dream. And so one of the advantages that we had over Nike at that point is the Nike Ape team were very inclusive, in-house. They knew better, whereas we pretended to be dumb and went outside the industry. So we went to medical device shows, we went to aerospace industries, Formula car shops, and we saw all these different materials that weren't being used in footwear. And we're like, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? Wouldn't it be cool if we did that? So we had seen all these different materials and processes, and we were dreaming of what the pump could be. And Litch and I were looking at it. So we were making Pump 1. We made an entire basketball shoe, and then we made the pump system. We stuffed this thing inside. And Litch and I were looking at it one day, and we just took the pump and wrapped it around a last and put a bottom under it. Like, why are we just doing this? We don't need all that. And so I had done these early sketches of futuristic shoes, and, you know, they had pump systems like that. So we went back, and I was sitting there in this. So we had the pump, and we were trying to figure out what to do with that. Then we had Graphite with the carbon fiber arch. At that point, the concept was just to use it in the arch, and then we had Hexalite, and we were trying to figure out how we could advance all of these things. And I love cars. I would go to the Detroit Auto Show, and I had this vision of building this. Rather than take each technology off and build an individual shoe for it, I had the idea with and Litch and Peter and I talked about it. It was like, why don't we build a concept car? Because the Dodge Viper was coming out around that time.
Yep.
And let's build a concept car equivalent in the sneaker world, and that will show the future of where these things can go. And that's the premise. I started doodling in this. I was in this mindless planning meeting, and I'm like, why am I even in here? And so I started I did this little thumbnail on my notebook, and I slid it over to Litch. I'm like, what do you think? Oh, let's make it. And so from there, we started to work on this thing. And I always struggled to call it a sneaker because I always viewed it as a machine for running, because it was the lightest of weight, the techiest of materials, the most amazing new processes that really weren't in the footwear business before. And that's kind of what it represented. And it was this vision of the future. And it was really hard because people internally couldn't see it. They just saw what was in front of their face, you know, white mesh, silver accents, navy hits and color pops, and some reflective. And I came to them with this fucking Sex Pistols punk rock in your face.
Hold that shoe up, Steve.
Yeah,
ridiculous.
red,
Hold that shoe
I'm
up.
telling you.
black, bright
That
yellow.
Pump Fury.
you know, people were like, "What is that thing? We're not gonna make that." And, you know, and
It
then
was it was the wildest thing I had ever seen. I remember where I was, and I was running track for Nebraska. I was in my freshman year. Only the upperclassmen got the new kicks, and so speaking of, okay, so this is what you were up against.
yeah,
You get a pair of these when you're varsity Nebraska, you know, Cornhusker track and field. Well, I'm not
Mhm.
getting a pair of those, and I happen to be working at the mall. I'm at Athlete's Foot at the mall, and I see this thing sitting on the wall. It is game over. I'm like,
Hold it up.
y'all can keep your kicks. I don't
Hold it up
need
again.
them. I got the future.
Mhm.
Hold it up again.
It's wild, man. It's wild, and I'm a Instapump Fury fan. Okay,
Hmm.
so then I even have iterations where they grew off of that later on,
Mhm.
keeping a lot of the original hardware. But this thing was beautiful. This thing was
Yeah.
so beautiful,
well, the thing is,
it's at arm's length at all times for me because I rock it so much.
well, it was funny because it was a lot of things. It was an exercise in minimalist construction because if you look at it, the normal sneaker at that point had
It's heavy.
anywhere from 50 to 80 components to build the
Yeah,
entire shoe. You know, to separate it all into the parts.
yeah,
We got that thing down to like 20 pieces to make the whole shoe because people
that's
were like,
crazy.
how are you going to sell this thing for $125 with all these expensive materials in it?
Mhm.
And by reducing the amount of parts, you can now reinvest the money into the higher quality of those minimal components.
Yep.
Mm.
So we took out
Look at
all the
that.
stiffeners and reinforcers and backers and reinvested it all in the carbon fiber, the urethane films for the bladder. And the other thing people don't realize is a high percentage of that shoe, the components were actually made in the USA. So the pump bladder was out, you know, the upper was actually made out in Chicopee, Mass. The carbon fiber,
Really?
yeah, the carbon fiber components were made in out here in Camarillo, California. The hexalite was made roughly in the same area in California through the aerospace companies. Um, it was pretty amazing. I mean, at least 60 or 70% of it was made in the USA and then sent over there to be assembled. It
Wow,
was cool.
Man. Now
that's
you
incredible.
mentioned Litch. You and Paul Litchfield, shout out to Paul. We're happy to have him back one day too, a good friend of ours. Um, you and him were literally mad sneaker scientists in listening to the both of y'all.
Oh yeah,
Literally.
Litch is funny. He had kind of a bioscience degree. Mine was product design, but I have this weird brain that uh, the two normally don't mix. I think like an engineer and design like an artist, and so it's very different. So I was actually able to work really well with those guys. A lot of time there's abrasion between the developer slash engineer and the artist designer. I was this
Hmm.
weird hybrid, and we had this really cool relationship between the three of us where if at any point one of us couldn't make the meeting, the other could essentially step in and represent them, even though those two had no design skills and um, no design eye. They understood, and it was like unspoken communication between us of what I was looking for.
Mhm.
I had kind of an essential understanding of what they were doing, so that any one of us could fill in for the other at any point in time, or we trusted each other to make the calls on things from aesthetics to engineering to materials to construction. And much like Litch and I were always on the learning curve of, oh, well, I don't know anything about this. Let's go learn everything that we can. So he dragged me along for a lot of the chemistry and plastic science, and I dragged him along for a lot of the aesthetics and influences to where I was coming from with how the thing was being designed and how I wanted it to look. And um, it was a very special relationship that it's very rare in the industry, as it turns out. You don't get opportunities like that with this magic team. We called ourselves the land of misfit toys because we didn't. Well, see, we didn't fit in with the rest of the traditional teams within Reebok. They kind of took this group of three weirdos and kind of threw us together, and out of it came all this magic. So it was a really special time, with special people, and they're friends for life. We talk to each other at least once a month,
That's cool.
the three of us, and stay in communication as we've taken our different paths. And
Awesome.
it was an amazing time, an amazing project, an amazing product. I mean, who would think, 35 years later or whatever it is, that'd still be selling it stronger than ever. At one point, it was 50% of Reebok's overall business. Yeah, as a uh, artist with a BFA, it's kind of cool to see this thing in the Smithsonian and the London Design Museum. Right now, it's a part of this exhibit called Future Now that Elizabeth Samelhack from Bodish Museum kind of put together, and it's called Future Now. And it's funny, this 30-plus-year-old thing is still considered the future. It's pretty wild, and it's touring a bunch of different art museums around the country. And they opened the exhibit in Portland, and then it went to Annapolis, which I might have to go make an appearance at. We'll see.
Oh yeah, and the Instapump Fury has become one of those shoes that has actually transcended, the original narrative for it, in that, yeah, it was, the future, but it also, the way it was designed, has managed to stay relevant because of the aesthetic. I mean, my most recent pair of Instapump Furies that I bought was a collaboration with Mason Martin Margiela.
Right.
Oh yeah, those are fun ones.
Right.
That was the most recent Instapump Fury I bought a couple of years ago. And who would have thought, from the original take on it that you saw Ridiculous holding up those years ago, that here we are, 2023, when I purchased those, that it would be a high fashion collaboration with a Parisian fashion house.
I know.
Or even the tech collaboration, as you said, to bring in, at the time when Boost was on the rise, and then to mesh those two together when Adidas had ownership of Reebok. That became one of my favorite models, because it took the newest cushioning, but they did it in a way that did not bastardize the original design. They actually went back to the original design for that one.
It's funny, that shoe was so polarizing internally. So many people were scared of it, and it kind of set that precedent for me. Oh, you're afraid of it? That means I'm on the right path, because it makes people uncomfortable. A little discomfort is good. It means you're doing something that's relevant, because people are unsure.
Right.
But in deep down, you knew it was the right thing to do. And it turned out to be, because here is this thing. It's, I don't know. I always say I have this gift from God to create this iconic product that takes on a life of its own. And this was just another one of them. It's pretty amazing.
That brings us to a very good point, though. Just what you're saying, exactly what you're describing. So many collaborations are not really seeking to do something individual, something new, something iconic. They're building off of platforms that are already built, and doing basically the equivalent of a coloring book. But do we need another collaboration, or more brands? Someone stepping out and being brave. Where do you see the industry? Not so much where it's going, because your answer could be far different from that. Where do you see we need to be going? Do we need the introduction of more brands that introduce more ideas?
I think that already happened, and it took Nike by surprise. Where On and Hoka,
Yep.
and now even ASICS is kind of stepping into the streetwear world, in places that then people would go like, no, that's not. We don't accept you there. So it's kind of cool to see these brands coming on strong, challenging the big ones. And that was, in my role I'll be starting next. That was one of the deciding factors. Do I want to go back to one of the big companies as they wallow around like a mammoth, or do I want to go to an agile middle-sized company that is hungry and wants to do new things? Because it's funny. I've said it multiple times. All these companies took a risk. That's how they started. They offered something nobody else did,
Yeah.
and then the minute they got successful, they become static and safe and perpetuate the business rather than take those quantum leaps that takes them
Right.
to those next levels. Yeah,
Right.
you know, I
Is that always the new brand, or can a big brand reshape themselves? We haven't seen it. I think, you know, our answer, at least for OSD, we've seen this time and time again where the big brand does become that lumbering mammoth that won't take the risk anymore.
Mhm.
Do you see that there's a path where a big brand could possibly get brave again?
I mean, if you think about it, what we were able to do with Adidas kind of did that, you know, between Boost and then coming in with Yeezy, because they needed to do something. I always say true innovation takes moments of desperation. They have to have no other choice but to take the leap. And
Right.
Adidas was struggling and they took the leap. And right now they've gone back into conservatism and
Right.
comfort.
Right.
It's funny to see a lot of our aesthetic just creeping into their thing. And it's interesting to see my influence on it and Ye's influence on it. But in a lot of ways, it's disappointing. Or is that all you got? That's why I always say, is that all you got? Like,
Right.
even with Nike, with the ginormous farm of designers they have, they go back and they come back with my Spectrum and my Spirit on Cage Zoom shoe, and it's like, of all the shoes that Supreme or Stussy could have picked, they picked my designs, which is
Right.
great and all, and it just adds to the story of the iconic
Right.
timelessness of the designs that I've touched. But is that all you got?
Right.
Well,
That's
well, you know what's interesting about that, right? So, Stephen, we spoke, before we introed you, and we spoke about, the legacy of being timeless, right? And
yeah.
we've given a couple examples of that already, right? And I think now, you have an archive that's been tapped at Adidas. That, of course, the symbiosis with your time with Yeezy. But let's talk about the other leaps back in time. The New Balance 550 has been a juggernaut for the last few years before it sort of cooled off. Another one of yours, right? Like,
It's mind blowing to see that shoe come back and be stronger than ever. And I like the fact that it's going head to head with the Air Force One and the Jordan ones, and right up there with it. So it kind of establishes that um, like there's two people they consider the goats, me and Tinker, and it's debatable on who is who. It's not a competition between us. We're good friends. It's like it's fun. It's fun to see these styles live on. 550 is just another one of my designs that has come on strong and stronger, and I see them everywhere. It's
Yeah.
amazing. It's
Yeah.
right.
amazing.
And that's the question, right? Is when we talk about, the next segment where we are with, innovation and philosophy, right? Before we move into that, we're talking to someone in you, Stephen Smith, that you've designed things that you probably never even imagined 20, 30, 40 years later you would still see them walking down the street.
Oh God, no.
So it's
And
as someone who thinks like you think, and we both have the common interest in cars, both classic and new when it's done right, and obviously sneakers. It's the gift and the curse for you, because when a brand gets, a little bit desperate and they know that they have gems in an archive from someone like you, here comes a 550. Here comes a 574 wave. Here comes, whatever from an Adidas archive. Here comes a new collaboration with an InstaPUMP Fury. The Yeezys are going to be back in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And now we talk about moving to the segment of philosophy and innovation, and Steve, take over when you're ready. But you represent every day you get up. You're a gift and a curse.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, but I don't know. I look at it as entertaining because here I am, 59, and I'm competing against my 22-year-old self in the market. So it's pretty wild. It's funny. I think about it a lot with music, and I have a lot of friends in the music industry. I've made friends with some of the old rock and roll guys, um, and it's very funny. You see these guys that had these great hits in the 80s, for example, right? But then they become formulaic because that's all they knew, that's how they were successful. They never
Yeah.
moved beyond it to, again, it's similar to the sneaker thing where they represented something different. They added a new dimension to their place, a new sound, a new style, but then they get stuck in that because they want to guarantee the success every time,
Right.
and you almost seal your own fate as a failure or tapering or leveling off. And I've never done that. I always want to, it was always back to that New Balance mentality of newer and better. And that's what's always driven me in that way, to not necessarily reinvent myself, but keep pushing myself to come up with new and better rather than settle in and cruise control and I can drop another one of these and it'll sell all day. But it's not so much lazy, it's just playing it safe. And the old punk rock in me was the young punk rocker in me that was never about faith. It was like,
Yeah.
fuck it, let's do it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes.
let's
Well, I
let's
mean,
Right.
that's
move ahead.
that's meant to solve the equation,
Yeah.
to not settle. And as a designer myself, as an artist, I feel that because there's an old adage in creative circles that it's never done. So
Yeah.
we are never satisfied.
But
Someone had to take it from us and put it in production.
they always tried to revisit that magic
Right.
by staying in that moment as opposed
Right.
to understanding the moment that created the magic.
Right.
If
Right.
that makes sense, it becomes like this
Absolutely.
catch-22. And I always try to create the process that created the magic rather than get stuck in a moment in time and move into the future. And people there was a time where people critiqued me for working at multiple companies over the years, but what it has allowed me to do is every time it's a new toolbox, a new palette, and a new brand to go work with their DNA to create the future for them. It was a new challenge rather than just designing for the same company over and over and over and over. And I've never designed the same thing twice. I mean, you look at the
Right.
shoes; they're very distinctive, very different for each brand. And
Right.
that's what I enjoy when it gets boring or static, and it's maybe it's time to move on, maybe it's time to do something else, and that's kind
Well,
of
it's no longer creation at that point. That what most people see as uncomfortable, as you said, I think that's the precipice for us, for
yeah,
creatives, is I have to be looking over the edge into the chasm and figure out how to cross it, how to get down into it. Like that is the point. For
yeah,
some, it's the result. For us, it's the challenge.
absolutely.
Mhm.
And
So,
that's
Steve,
yes.
how much? And we're gonna get to your new role. We definitely want to hear about that. But even in where you are currently, in your personal design journey, how much has the word sustainability creeped into what you're doing and what you've been asked to do or what you've been exposed to?
I think it's a big buzzword. It's good for the environment, but it's conflicting because a company wants to sell more product, and that's not the best thing for the environment. It's filling the world with more stuff, right? Um, I think there's a lot you can accomplish through materials and be a better citizen of the planet, and that's the way I view it. Because a lot of times it's hypocritical to go, oh, we're sustainable, but you're still landfilling it, and you're increasing the volume of stuff you're putting in the landfill. Because this always, as a corporation, you want to increase sales, right? So increasing sales is a volume. So the more volume you put out there, the more junk you're putting out into the world, and so it becomes this kind of catch-22. And a lot of the traditional sneakers, the materials are incompatible when you regrind or reuse. And I think going into my next role, there is that ability, being a sole material that then you can repurpose, regrind, reuse, and that singularity, I think, is it's a different approach to it rather than um, this idea of design for disassembly, or there's always going to be something you can't get rid of. And so a lot of the times, I think a lot of the companies are just blowing smoke, and it's a buzzword. Because again, they're making more, right?
Yeah, yeah.
If you're truly
It's marketing.
sustainable, think back the old days of leather dress shoes and stuff. You could resole them. That's why cobblers existed, and there's still a few repair and cobbler shops. But to me, that's almost more sustainable, being able to resole it and keep a big part of it alive and create less overall volume,
Right.
but
Right.
perpetuate the use of it. I mean, similar to the old Porsche I have. It's from the 50s, but yet I could still jump in it and drive 14 hours down the coast from Oregon down to San Francisco, even though it's a 60-something-year-old car, right? You go buy a new one, you could do the same thing, but to me, I love it, but I can still use it as it was intended. And
I love that.
that was that restoration process. So is that more sustainable than buying a new car that uses resources up? Possibly.
Possibly.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I think in the grand scheme, you would say yes, but again, you represent so. To put it in a weird way, you've been around so long, you're lapping yourself in this industry because you're coming out with new stuff, like you said, that's sitting on the shelf against stuff you created decades ago, right? And now, in your new role, which we'll get into in a bit, Dee is excited to ask those questions to you about that. In your new role, but art, culture, and technology, how do you balance those three?
Oh, interesting. I mean, I think it's part of being immersed in all of it, and it's all influencing you simultaneously, and you're soaking it all in, and then it becomes a balance. I mean, art, because of my training as an artist, I went to art school, but you're influenced by culture, or you're influencing culture, and I think that's one of the key things too. Seeing what else is going on, being influenced by music, trends. I don't mean being trendy, but seeing what other things are happening as far as colors and materials that the sneakers need to hook up with. So, because you want people to wear them as much as they become collectibles, like the Yeezys and the Jordans and a lot of other things that become these collectibles per se. The intent is to still use them, and so I think. And part of that brings in the engineering side of it. They should still be functional rather than fast fashion. Because fast fashion becomes that wasteful thing again, of filling the environment with crap and stuff.
Right.
That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. One of my favorite articles I've ever read was Mr. Sunichi Kayano, who said he had a problem when ASICS wanted him to design the next one. His problem was, I designed the best one last time.
Yeah.
Why am I doing it again?
Yeah, it's interesting. In those early days, in the New Balance days, the processes were advancing so quickly that you wanted to update it because you went from cut and buff EVA to being able to mold polyurethane, get a skin on it, and then polyurethane getting surfaces and shapes, and then getting to the same thing with being able to mold EVA and then injection EVA. So the processes were rapidly evolving that then allowed you to make the product better. And
So then
so,
that kind of links up with that question. Technology, did it open a door for you to, as you said, you wanted to revisit because the technology allowed it? Um, is that where tech is doing a good thing by opening up those doors, or is tech still playing more of a background role and the design comes first?
I think the tech drives it. It's all
Mm.
symbiotic in that when a new tech comes out, you're like, damn, I want to design something to go along with that.
Right.
Similar to 3D printing, there's shapes and forms that you can do with that you can't do in traditional molding. And I think the part of the problem is it's not fully evolved yet. People are like, oh, fully 3D printed shoe. Yeah, you can, but it's still just a clog that you can do with EVA or polyurethane. So why do it? If you can push the envelope and see, I always like, if I have a material that I can do something that you can't do in any other process, then you use it. But if you're just replicating something else that then costs twice as much, why do it, right? I mean,
Right.
you still want to give the wearer the value.
Right.
Complex complexity was the joke we would always say at Nike. Because they had complex simplicity as one of their phrases. So we always came up with complex complexity. It's like, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. And it's a
Should.
do.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what's
So,
cool about the Crocs thing. It's fully molded.
mhm.
Integrate 3D printed components into it. It's going to be different. It's going to be fun, and what we do with that.
So are you, as you're taking on this new role at Crocs, what's exciting to you? What's making you say, oh, like, why'd you go there? What made you quote unquote sign on the dotted line and go to Crocs?
I think it was that their ability for agility. It was very different than any of the other companies talking to. They got shit done, which is what I was always about. They got shit done. And oh, you want this? Yes. Okay, we'll do that.
So,
What's the team you're looking at? I'd like these people. Great, let's get them. And I'm like, perfect. As opposed to like, well, him and Hall put a plan together. We got to review it by HR, then we got to review it through finance, and they pull the strings. And I dealt with that. One of the big companies was they couldn't even talk to me. Like design couldn't make the call or talk to me. HR and finance made the call on who they could hire, which was, who the fuck are you hiring for? I'm not an accountant. I'm not an accountant. I'm a recruiter. I'm a designer. It was absurd to me. And I was finally like, you know what? No thanks. Disrespect. Sorry.
Right.
And that's part of it too, was respect for the position, respect for my role, respect for my place in the business. A lot of people treated, they asked me to come and then wanted me to go through this process like I was just another designer off the street. And it's like, I'm not an egotistical person, but come on. These guys.
like you showed your work already. I mean,
right.
It's out there.
Google me.
Right.
There it is. There it is.
Yep.
So
yep.
It was an attitude thing too.
Okay.
Attitude and respect. And then the company itself, it's very strong. You can do new shapes and forms, and that's what I love. And you can push the envelope as to what you can make. And from an innovative point of view, that's what you want to do. And then also I get to touch Hey Dude, which they can use some help. It's back, Hey Dude's back in Boston, so I get to go to Boston occasionally, which is good because it's where I'm from. It was a win-win across the board. And I've never met a bigger collection of just nice people at the Crocs organization.
Cool.
And they were nice to me, which at the end of the day is important. It's a place you want to work with, people you want to work with. That's the way I look at it. I'm not there to be your friend, but if we become friends, great. That's the way I view it. I mean, like me and Litch and Foley, it's like we're friends above and beyond work, and we still are to this day. And that's the kind of work environment that matters to me. It's not all about money. I don't know. It's so many people are driven by money and status and position, and those things. I like money. I'm not going to say I don't, but it's not the driving force behind what I do.
Right.
I just, have to put food on the table, have some fun clothes, have some toys here and there. Great. I don't need the one with the most money when you die doesn't matter because you're not taking it with you. You might as well live your life. And that's the way I view it. And my life wasn't revolved around acquisition of hoarding of money.
Right.
I have things that interest me that I bought with the money, but it doesn't bring you complete happiness. You need to find the joy in yourself, and the joy for me is creation.
Well said.
And being able to drive some of the things you create.
Oh yeah, well that's not a bad thing too.
As the car guy, to that end and to that effect, without you revealing too much, what does the Steve Smith magic sort of in your mind look like as you approach the new role here at Crocs, without giving up too much?
I mean, I think part of it is just building my little squad, and it'll be, they've given me almost like creative free reign. So it's a lot like it was working with Ye, where we can dream and build. I mean, ultimately, of course, you affect the bottom line because that's why you're there, and grow the brand. And that's what I'm looking forward to, working with their teams, that we can work together. Because I think that's the important thing. Everybody working together, creating a cool collaborative environment focused on the end game. That's what I've always been about, is the end game.
Right.
And
well, I'll tell you,
make cool stuff that people like. It's simple, right?
yeah,
Right.
I tell you this.
Right.
Years ago, Li Ning had a foam molded running shoe.
Yeah, the yellow running one. Yeah,
You remember it? Okay.
absolutely. They were trying to recruit me to come work there at that time.
I tell you this, Mr. Steve Smith, it would be a bookend moment. If I could go from these to some performance Crocs, you get me in a pair of Crocs, you are the man above what we already know you to be.
Start the clock.
There we go.
He told you start your clock, and you always got a clock around your neck.
There we go.
Coach, you already got a clock around your neck, so he's telling you what time it is.
There we go.
But Steve, it's interesting too. Let's not, we would be remiss in not being able to let everyone know this, but you're moving in a role as ahead of creatively two brands that have had success recently, not just one.
Yeah.
I've had to do a little bit of a deep dive. I was well aware of the success of Hey Dude a few years ago. I think RDQLUS. I think you and I both kind of did a deep dive on how much they were moving and the numbers, prior to the struggles. And we were surprised, but again, RDQLUS being in the Midwest, where it's a very heavy Hey Dude, customer. When we did a deep dive on seeing how the numbers were moving a couple of years ago, we were like, wow. I had no clue. And RDQLUS was just like, yeah, they're everywhere here.
Yeah, and it was a good friend of mine who's also industrial designer, Alan Tipp. He did some work with Under Armour and some others in 180s. He put me on to paying attention to what they were doing.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that the strategy was to ignore the coasts. And so that's why I believe it was so prolific through the Midwest. I hadn't really seen that many of them. And then I was, just post Yay, I went out to Michigan to go hunt, to get in the woods and get my mind off of things. And we went into Mayer there, and there were these New Balances and Hey Dudes. I'm like, oh, look at these things. Interesting.
Yep.
because they weren't in the Northwest as far as I knew. And then I'm at the orthodontist last week, and there's this Lake Oswego housewife in a pair, and I was like, oh, look at that, she's got on Hey Dudes, you know. So it's kind
Wow.
of funny. So it
Yeah.
shows that there's reach and opportunity to help that brand, and they're
Yeah.
looking
Yeah.
for.
Well, it goes back to culture also. Like we talked about earlier, us flyover states get real we get real defensive about being forgotten here in the middle.
Yeah, yeah.
And so when something speaks to that culture, we rally behind it.
There's money. There's money to be made across the whole country.
Yes, sir.
Yep. Are you
Sure.
excited about what you get to tinker with Hey Dude just as well?
What's that?
Are you excited about what you get to tinker with at Hey Dude as well?
Oh, absolutely. I think it'll be kind of fun. I mean, obviously the priority's Crocs, and then
Mhm.
help Hey Dude as they ask. But first week I'm going to go meet with the presidents of both brands and see what their needs are and what they'd like me to help with. And I think that's important. You know,
That's cool.
it's
That's very,
everything's been incredibly welcoming,
very
like I've
cool.
never experienced before.
Hmm.
Amazing. A clean slate, a new blank canvas for artist Stephen Smith, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of funny. People are like, "What Crocs? Yeah, going from Yeezy to Crocs or whatever." I'm like, "Well, it's slides, the foam runners. It all makes total sense. It's a continuum.
Makes
You know,
total sense.
Exactly.
Right.
by that.
Sport mode, baby.
Yeah,
Sport mode. There you go. Yeah. Steven,
I think
is there a little bit of I wouldn't call it nervousness, but a good nervousness that you're feeling right now, because this is it's a new beginning. I mean, I think with any new job, new position, um, you're like, okay, this is new. It's like almost like the first day of high school, or first day of first year of classes. Are you feeling any of that anxiety or just uneasiness, but maybe in a good sense?
I think it's in a good way. Just going to meet all the new team and the
Mm,
company. Um, what's made me nervous was not working, because this is the first time in probably 20 years where I've actually had a space of time to myself. It's
right.
almost like right back to work. Somebody was recruiting me, or you had to get back to work, and it's almost uncomfortable to not be working. It drives me crazy, kind of. I'm like, people are like, "Why are you in such a hurry?" I said, "I don't know. I want to get back to work. It's
Right.
uncomfortable to not be working. It's nice, It's driving my car around, going here, going there, racing. That's nice, that aspect of it. But I get uncomfortable when I'm not working.
same here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
So like, can't wait to get back to work.
That's awesome. And again, as a creative, there's the precipice, You're looking over that edge, ready to jump.
I think there'll be some fun stuff coming. Get ready.
Mhm.
Like you
Anything.
said, you
Yeah, I
said,
always tell people
I'm
that.
telling you, I promise you, you make
You know,
me you make me put on a pair of Crocs. We're gonna announce it from the mountaintops.
Sean knows, like the Guggenheim.
yeah,
Frank Lloyd Wright did that thing when he was 74. I
Yeah, he
think it was
did. Yeah,
absolute
he did.
masterpiece. And
Yeah,
I'm
he
a few
did.
years away from that, so I ain't done yet. That's
There we
yeah.
go. There we go.
Oh yeah, on that note right there, note right there, as
That's
the
mic
new
drop.
Stephen Smith chapter begins.
Yeah.
Final words for everyone out in the sneaker world as we return, and people are going to watch this episode from all over the world where we have fans. What final words are you going to leave with them?
No, I don't know. I'm happy you guys are back. We talked about it for a long time, and I've stayed in touch with you guys over the years because you're badasses at what you do and where you are and how
Thank
you're
you.
helping the community. Um, Hang tight. Future's there. Everybody else should strive for that. Do the best you can. Make the best product that you can. Build the things that you'd like to have. I never other than initially when I got to New Balance, design for myself. I think that's an important thing, is have a filter to
Mm,
be able to design for the every person. But our job is to create objects of desire. Don't just make another something. Make something people really, they got to have it. And I think that's important. And the things that we did at Yeezy, for example, people had to have them. They became these collectibles and collector items, art pieces. And some ways in a lot of ways it's accessible art versus what a lot of other people do, which is just another foot covering. And I can't view it as that. You should make these things special.
Yeah.
I don't know. I look at a car and you want it. Like I gotta have. I really want that. And I've already got two other. I want that. It's so cool. And fortunately, what we do is more affordable. Where you can go, I want that. You can get another pair.
Right.
Yeah.
But use them, wear them, have some fun in them. I mean, that's the intent, right? Comfort, comfort with style. There's nothing better.
Absolutely.
Well, I got to thank you for your years of support for us, Stephen. Got to thank you for definitely most recently coming and supporting us in our new endeavor here at the Academy. That was major. People are still talking about that, the students at Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia. We are here to support you in any and every way possible. You know where we are and how to reach us, and we're happy to do that the same way you have done that for us, bro. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for everything.
Always happy to be with you guys. Anytime I can come into the city, I'll do it. If I make it to Houston, I'll come see D. I like Texas. I like Houston. I like Galveston quite a bit, actually.
Mhm.
Hopefully, you've made it out there to the beaches.
Absolutely. Yep.
Field trip to Omaha, Nebraska, too.
Yeah,
through.
I want to go
Come
there.
through.
Pee-wee always wants me to come to visit in Omaha, so we'll see.
You let me know.
We'll say we'll rally the troops.
Yeah.
They've got the SAC museum there.
We do indeed.
I want to go there because I think they have an SR-71, and then they have all.
They do. It's actually, we have the actual Blackbird hanging from the ceiling. You come, my treat.
Nice. And the other one I always wanted to see. It was funny. I did stop there on my way when I moved to the West Coast because I wanted to see the B-58 Hustler because I think that was one of the coolest Delta Wing jets ever.
Yep.
And of course, the one time I'm driving through, they've had it out for maintenance.
Yeah.
And I'm like, God, that's the one jet I wanted to see there. But I did like to see they had all the different rockets and missiles all lined up outside.
Yep.
It was pretty amazing. And then
That's right.
the replicas of the atomic bombs in there, which was kind of neat.
Yeah, SAC Museum is amazing.
Yeah, and then they had a pretty amazing display of the Tuskegee.
Yes. Yes. The red tails are out there.
Yep. Great museum. If anybody's passing through.
Sounds like that's going to be an inspiration point to get ridiculous in the first pair of Crocs. I'm just saying.
Don't hype me up. Don't hype me up.
So,
I saw a pretty awesome collab coming in 2025 that I gotta have. That's all I'll say.
All right.
To be continued.
Continued, as they say.
Indeed.
Yep.
Indeed.
Stephen Smith back on the return to OSD, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, bro.
We have new episodes coming soon, so subscribe and click the bell to turn on notifications.